Okay, we are taping.
All right, so as your professor said today, I'm going to teach you two things. The first thing is an exception to the agreement of the subject of a sentence with its verb. So first I'm going to give you a couple examples to illustrate what the rule is, and then we'll talk about the exception. So first of all, I'll give you two sentences here. The first one, ho anthropos ton lithon, and then we're going to use the verb pharaoh, which means, of course, I carry. I'm going to give you another example. I want you to think about what goes in the blank here. Hoi anthropoi ton lithon, and then, of course, blank. So how would we fit this verb into these blanks here? What would be the conjugation of the verb right here with this singular subject?
Be fair.
Exactly. Yes. Very good. So the verb agrees in number with the subject that it goes with. So down here, the subject hoi anthropoi in the plural, what would be the verb that goes with that? Exactly. Very good. All right. So, Pharisee. Now, this is what you're familiar with. This is how the subject and the verb have been going together thus far. But there's an exception to this rule, particularly in Attic Greek, which is the dialect that you study in this book, and it is that neuter plural subjects, like for instance, ta probata, the sheep, are going to take a singular verb. So your book gives you an example: ta probata polun thorubon poi a. So again, this is perfectly grammatically good Attic Greek prose to say ta probata polun thorubon poi. Does everyone see what's going on here? The difference between this and this, even though the verb is plural, because it's a neuter plural, it's going to take a singular verb. For some reason, the Attic Greeks thought of neuter plural subjects as a collective and thus as a single unit. This isn't always the rule in Greek language. Homer, for instance, uses a plural with the neuter plural, but for the sake of this book in Attic Greek, this is a perfectly good rule. So does everyone understand that? Any questions? Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is pronouns. So what is a pronoun? Can anyone tell me what exactly a pronoun does in a sentence as a figure of speech?
It kind of replaces a noun.
Right, exactly. It's in the place of a noun. So your name was
Amy.
So, for instance, instead of saying this is Amy, Amy is a woman, Amy is sitting, Amy has a pink shirt, I can use pronouns to simplify this language and make the sentence flow, or these sentences flow better. This is Amy. She is a woman. She is wearing a pink shirt. She is sitting down. So the pronoun there is she. It's standing in place of the noun Amy. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So in Greek, there is of course a first person pronoun like there is in English. There's in English we say I or me. So I'll go ahead and list the declensions of this first person pronoun. Let's see. So ego would be I. This is the nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. Ego. And mu for the dative, the genitive, I'm sorry. The dative being Emoy, and ama for the first person singular. These are the forms. Then we also have first person plural, which would be like we or us in English. Again, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. Hemes. Sorry. Hemon. Henin. Hemas. So these are the first person forms. It's important to note when you think about pronouns in the Greek language that for the subject, the nominative here, it's somewhat less vital in Greek than it would be in English because, for instance, think of the verb, any verb, but we'll talk particularly about akouo, like I hear. In English, this is two words, right? I, a pronoun, and hear. In Greek, though, these two, the pronoun and the verb, are together. The pronoun here is really able to be understood from the ending of the verb. So when they actually explicitly list the nominative case, it's going to be emphatic almost all of the time, I would say. So if you say ego, or let's see here, ego akouo, this really stresses the fact that I myself am the one doing the listening, because you don't really have to have this in the sentence. Does that make sense to everyone? How the nominative is emphatic? Okay. There are also other forms of the first person singular, the book list. If you want to follow along, this is on page 65, of course. I'll save you some time and not write them out, but you know, they have these unemphatic forms, mu, moi, me, su, soy, se, that are unaccented. Unlike these, they all have a regular accent. These are unaccented, which means they're enclictic. I guess you've heard about that before. It's probably not, you probably don't have to know the specifics of accentuation for this class, but at any rate, there are these other forms. So these forms here, particularly these, are normally used with a preposition, the book says. So you'll find ep, emma, rather than the simple ma that's also listed in there. That's one rule, used with prepositions, and also they're used for emphasis. So if you want to say like, give the ball to me instead of to you, you would use this form rather than the unaccented form. All right. So this is the first person singular and plural forms. You know, this means I, subject, of me for the genitive, dative, indirect object, to or for me, accusative is the object of the sentence, and the same thing down here. Next form, another kind of pronoun is a second person pronoun, su. In English that would be you. So in Greek we have, let's see, su, soy, and se. And these also have alternative forms that are not accented when they're not used with a preposition or not emphatic. And those are listed in the book. These are the singular forms, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. And then the plural forms are like these, but they use upsilon instead of eta. So, humes, humon, humin, humas. This is, singular. You is the subject. of you, genitive, to or for you, indirect object, dative, you is the object, and so on and so forth. You all down here for the plural. It gets a little bit trickier when we get finally to the last sort of pronoun, which is the third person pronoun. So this is second person, first person, I, or we, you, you all, or plural. Now we get to the third person. What would the third person be? If this is I, this is you, what is the third person pronoun just in English?
He, she, or it.
Exactly. He, she, or it. All right. So it's a little bit trickier because of the Greeks having a slightly different concept of gender than we have. Of course, there's three genders in Greek, and what are those?
Masculine, feminine, neuter.
Right, exactly. So you have masculine, feminine, and neuter. And it's important to remember that some verbs that are, say, masculine or feminine in Greek, will take, for instance, holithos, the rock, of course. Sorry, it's getting so low. But the rock has a masculine gender in Greek, even though we would probably consider it to have something like a neuter gender. When we see a rock, we don't say he or she to describe a rock, except in special cases. But the Greeks do assign, gender to this masculine gender. So, for instance, let's see an example of this in a sentence, and maybe that'll make it more clear. So you say, Horas ton lithon, and we'll make it a question. So, do you see the rock? And in English we would say, I see it. That would be the proper response. In Greek, though, the masculine pronoun is going to be used even though you translate it as it. So, auton horo would be what we would say. So again, this refers back to the gender here, even though we'd say, I see it. So let's go over these forms, and that'll also make this more clear. So again, we have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, singular, and then there's going to be plural. Actually, one thing to note about the third person pronoun is the nominative isn't ever used really. It's actually something that looks just like it, but it's called an intensive adjective, meaning in many instances self. So if you see the nominative, it's not the personal pronoun, it's the intensive adjective, which you're going to learn about a little bit later. But at any rate, declension would be autou, auto, auton. Let's see. All right. So this is of, him, or it, depending on the gender of the noun which the pronoun is standing in for.